Well, hello, hello. And you're watching The Hidden Truths, the TV talk show for the thinking American. My name is Aage, and I'm the host. I have with me today a legend in his own time when it comes to paranormal and UFO research. He's a world traveler, he's an author, he's a very sought-after lecturer, and he is a native of Tucson, Arizona. And he has some information that is phenomenal. He's probably the one on the American continent that has researched the German flying discs more than anybody I know. And you're going to see some pictures tonight about the German flying saucers, the machines that would have turned the war against the Allied forces. If we were given just a few more months, we would have lost the war. You're going to see some astounding photos and drawings, schematics, that I don't know if they're hardly ever shown anywhere before, of this very controversial issue that Hitler and his cronies created right before the end of the war. And I want to introduce to you Wendell Stevens.
Howdy, sir.
Well, here we are, finally. It took a while to get here. You're a busy man.
Yeah, move around a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we want to talk about tonight?
Well, I don't know. I started out on the flying saucers, and boy, I tell you, that is an excellent place to continue. You were running through some slides here, and I've seen some of these before, but I saw you have some new ones that I've never seen before.
Well, you know, the German disc research took two separate tracks. One phase was moving through the German aerotechnical industry, which was all the aircraft manufacturers building the new aircraft and new weapons for the German Reich. And that was all in super secrecy also. But we had the orthodox aircraft builders, BMW and Zeppelin and Arado and all of the others were, or not all of them, but many of the others were working on disc projects. The disc research project was the V7 weapons research program of the German Reich. We knew that the V1 was the buzz bombs, the V2 was the rocket, the intercontinental rockets. We heard of V3 and V4, and I don't know really what they were, but they were other exotic weapons, and we never heard of the V7 weapons research program. The V7 weapons research program was all discs. And one phase, as I say, was working through the German aerotechnical industry in an ordinary way, and the other one was the research was carried out in greater secrecy by the SS, the Nazi SS themselves. And it was
the Black Sun
kept completely under the control of the Nazi SS, and Entwicklung SSE4 is the staff office that managed the V7 weapons research program for the SS. And the SS versions used exotic engines and exotic technical phenomena. They used free-energy devices to power the craft, and they had anti-gravity control. Now, those were all managed under the SS program. The German aerotechnical industry was using heat engines and fossil fuels. They were powered mostly by jet engines.
Yeah, they had some discs with jet engines in them.
Yeah, and I can show you some pictures of those when we get to them here. So there were these two programs working along side by side. I received a letter from a Polish researcher living near Warsaw, Breslau I think it was at the time, who had a family member that worked in one of the Kugelblitz factories. The Germans collectively called them Kugelblitz, and it means fast ball of light. And this man had a relative working in a factory, and when all of the SS factories were evacuated, they had 9 research facilities all going by the time the Germans were reversed in Russia and being driven home. At that point, a meeting was held at high level, staff level, where they were looking for strategy, trying to plot strategy. They decided that they would decentralize German industry. The big manufacturers opened subsidiaries in South American countries. And this was to provide an economic base for a Fourth Reich to come back after the Third Reich is forced out. Along with this decentralization of German industry came an attempt to evacuate their most secret and most potential research projects, which included all of the Nazi research programs under the V7 weapons systems. And that was managed by the Nazi Entwicklungsstelle SSE4 staff. And they evacuated the staff and all of the facilities but one. There were 9 research facilities working at one time. And they successfully evacuated 8 of them. One of them was overrun by the Russians. They blew it up and tried to destroy it as much as possible, but the Russians succeeded in capturing the old sites of 4 of these research facilities, where the English captured one and the Americans captured another one, the French another one. But they were gone. There was nothing there. The facilities were evacuated, and the infrastructure was destroyed, blown up by bombs, and then in some cases was even plowed up after that.
Oh, really?
So there was nothing left in Germany when the war ended on any of the disc research projects. The phase that was working through the German aerotechnical industries program was also evacuated, and all of the engineers and scientists were taken with it, leaving nothing behind. And then besides that, as each aerotechnical agency or production facility fell into the hands of the Allied powers overrunning Germany, we backed up trucks, intelligence people backed up trucks and hauled all the documents away from all of those companies. Everything was, the files were all taken and brought to the United States. Now, we did that. We brought them to the United States. The English did it. They took what they captured to England. What the French took what they captured to France, and the Australians took what they captured to Australia. And how we discovered the German disc research program at all was many years afterwards. The Australians were going through their captured documents, and they found a 16-millimeter briefing film for German staff officers to briefly summarize the disc research program for future events, future planning. And they took this tech film and put a leader on it and a trailer, and described the origin of the Nazi Party and how they became involved with alien extraterrestrials through a metaphysical research program, and how this all came about. And they released that as a video documentary. And it's run around the country.
That was Maria Artisches, wasn't it?
Who?
Maria Artisches was what that medium was.
I don't remember the name of the lady, but yeah, that's where it all started, with a voice channel that they developed into a face-to-face confrontation, meetings, and some assistance given them, and that was all managed by the Nazi Party.
Yeah. Actually, Hitler actually didn't know a lot about this in the very beginning of it.
It's like our government. This was so secret that they had a very small need-to-know circle. And it was all working within this small need-to-know circle, and people who really didn't need to know weren't included in it. He was advised that a program was in development, but he didn't get any details on it. It's like our government. We know that we have programs in development, but our president doesn't know what we built. He doesn't know what we've got flying in Area 51, for example, and nobody's going to tell him.
Well,
because he can be elected. He's an elected official, and in our government, all elected or appointed officials are usually left outside of the loops because they can leave office to take the secrets with them. So there's a staff of career people that never leave the position that manage all of this. And you know, it's interesting because the German society was probably working very much the same way.
I'm sure.
And I got a letter from a Polish researcher, they say, who had a relative working in a Kugelblitz factory, and when they evacuated the factory, the Germans came back a year later and called all of the former workers together that refused to go. You know, they had a choice. They could go or stay. Those that stayed behind were called together for a big picnic and an awards program. They're going to pay off bonuses to everybody. They had the picnic and lined them all up for a group shot, and then shot them, machine gunned them, and killed them all. All that went to the picnic were killed and buried in a big pit. There were a few that didn't get to the picnic that survived to tell the story, and this guy was one. So he's telling me that in his research, he discovered that we had had carried away 22 Kugelblitz versions to the United States, and that they were at the White Sands Missile Test Range. Now, how he happened to know that is he had a relative who also was an American serviceman. He was in the American Army, whose name was Robert Allen Kolitsky. And Robert Allen Kolitsky, having had association with the Kugelblitz program in Breslau, was one of the paperclip people that we brought back here, a scientist that we had working in our own employ. And he was working in the White Sands Missile Test Range where we were testing captured Kugelblitz craft. And now the Polish guy is writing to tell me that his brother, Alan Kolitsky, was the first on the scene at the UFO crash 8 miles southwest of Laredo, which was always regarded as a UFO crash. And he's telling me it wasn't a UFO at all, that it was a German Kugelblitz. That the pilot found in the wreckage, which looked like it was a strange-shaped small human with a football helmet on, was actually a monkey, a rhesus monkey of a larger species.
Oh, really?
That was raised in an American institute. It was trained to be used as a physiological subject aboard the V-2 rockets and the captured Kugelblitz rockets. You know, we knew that we were putting them in V-2s. Our public didn't even know we were testing Kugelblitz here. So we got
kind of like the Russian dog Laika. That was the first one in space.
Exactly. They're studying physiological effects on the humans because they expected to send them to very high altitudes and at high speeds. So this occupant of this craft that crashed near southwest of Laredo was a monkey named Emu. And Kolitsky's friend trained Emu and 22 other monkeys for future flights. And so Kolitsky is in the control center at White Sands, where they have this craft was on a programmed flight. And it broke control someplace along its course and got out of control of the radar people, and they could only watch it, but they couldn't control it anymore. It went into an erratic flight maneuver and descended in a long descent, all watched by radar all the way down to crash southwest of Laredo. Now, the control people knew what happened as soon as it broke control. And they called all air traffic in the clear and told them to look out, stay out of such and such a trajectory because an out-of-control vehicle was coming down there. And they asked for any military aircraft or civilian aircraft operating in the area to watch for it and report. A B-25 flying from California to Texas in that space about that time saw the object descending. They were at something like 10,000 feet. It was 7,000 or 8,000 feet above them. They saw it descending in a wobbling descent, and Major Rudolph Pestalozzi aboard that craft he was an intelligence man freeloading on a flight to Texas. And he picked up the radio and reported over the radio what he observed at it, and it flew out of sight. The B-25 tried to follow it, then returned to course when it outdistanced them. So we had reports on it. We still thought that it was a UFO and that everything fit, except the people at the radar site knew what they were tracking. The people that were observing it knew what they were tracking. The people that trained the monkey knew what they were tracking. They all knew that it was out of control and it was going to crash near Laredo. And so they were even on their way before it actually hit the ground. And it hit the ground about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By 6 o'clock that afternoon, Robert Allen Kolitsky and his brother Myron arrived in Laredo. They picked up a doctor there, a Army Reserve doctor, and proceeded to the scene where they observed the craft smoking, the ruins smoking, the body in the ruins. They pulled the body out. The doctor from Laredo examined it. They knew it was a rhesus monkey at that time. The people that came later at 11 o'clock that night to pick up the residue were only told that it was a crashed test vehicle, and that it should be all the remains should be picked up and carried back to White Sands, and the ground cleared with nothing left behind, which is exactly what they did. So now one of our UFO reports that we always liked turns out to be a test of a German Kugelblitz, and that was one.
Well, I tell you, the story gets deeper and deeper the more you start researching this, because there's an awful lot of material out there, but very few people are talking about it.
That's right.
I wonder why.
Well, for one thing, our government tries to keep the news and interest from traveling. They try to make it look silly. They try to keep it in the loony bin. There's another UFO case that is commonly regarded as a UFO crash that we know what the vehicle was. It was also a Kugelblitz, one of the German research vehicles. It was a Mies Barroso version of a Haunebu B-2 that was on an experimental flight from Germany that also lost control and crashed on Spitsbergen Island.
That one I know of.
That was recovered by the Norwegians. They sent a team up there and carried it back to Rodby Research Institute, Rodby Technical Institute, which was a research center there. And they studied it for 2 weeks and then announced that they were going to issue a report on it the following Monday. This was on a Friday or something like that. Over the weekend, American and English intelligence people arrived, talked to the authorities there. The Colonel Darnville, who had made the study and announced the announcement that he would report their findings the following week. They can't find him. He has disappeared. The newsmen that were looking for him to get the report couldn't find him. He'd been transferred someplace else. But what really happened is American and English intelligence officers now are afraid that the Norwegians are going to release the information on it. Now, knowing what it was, they knew it was a German vehicle. And they went to Norway, persuaded the Norwegian government to call it all off, don't release anything, give them certain parts of the residue that they wanted, some that they lacked. And the Norwegian government, the pressure was strong enough, they caved in and agreed to kill the story and pack up material from it and ship it to the United States. Now, I know about that because the officer in the research center there, Rodby Institute, that packed the material to ship, came to my house in Tucson in about 1972 or 73. And he was visiting, he's retired from the service in Norway, and he was visiting California and taking a trip across the country on a tour bus that stopped in Tucson, and to let people look at things here, and it was going to overnight, and he came to my house to tell me that who he was. He was a colonel, let's see, a major colonel, oh gosh, can't think of the name now.
No, he was an officer in the Air Force.
He was an officer in the
Air Force, I think.
In the Norwegian Air Force. And he said that when he packed the material, he made the shipping documents, and he thought that these might be important someday, and he made another set of shipping documents for himself.
Oh, okay.
And he offered to send me a copy of those shipping documents, which never arrived. He didn't give me an address or telephone number or anything. And Nordby, I think his name was. Anyway, I've never received them, but he was an eyewitness to the shipping of the documents to the United States and England. So we know now that the English and the Americans knew a whole lot more about the German research program than they've ever released or published or let anybody know about.
Yeah, that crash on Spitsbergen, I have a story of my own on that one, from confirmation from somebody I knew back in Norway. That was there. They was at the site. And of course they were ushered away, and then the military took over. God.
Would you like to see some pictures of the German Kugelblitz program?
I would love to. Maybe
Okay,
you can
here is
comment
well,
there we go.
back up. No, this is the one we want. This book was published, it's an underground publication, published in Canada. It's written by German refugees Mattern and Friedrich. And they also were associated with the Kugelblitz research program in Germany, and they fled Germany as refugees and got asylum, obtained asylum in Canada. And from the information they had and backtracking through people that they knew and other sources, they succeeded in putting together a story of the Nazi secret weapons that did this program. And they published it in this little book, it was an underground publication printed by Samizdat, which is noted for underground publications. It's not a very big book, but it had a lot of information in it about the Kugelblitz programs, and it was kind of a start on our research, because we first started out trying to verify the information here and found substantial verification for it, and that they were only making a summary report in this. There's a whole lot more that was going on than actually was in there. Here's some
of those pictures that you have here now coming up, were they in that book?
No.
Okay.
No. We discovered these in subsequent research. Here's a publication called Flugzeug Profile number 23, printed in Germany just about 5 years ago, where some German researchers are trying to put the programs back together, and they're working with refugee researchers out of Germany, and the report was put together by P. Mercado and an associate who are Portuguese, and it was they were investigating this story through German researchers that sought asylum in Portugal. See, Portugal was neutral, and at the end of the war, many German researchers went to Portugal.
Yeah.
They all knew that we were looking for them, and they to escape us, many of them went to Portugal, where P. Mercado and his friend were friends and associates of many of the German exiles living in Portugal, and they were able to collect a lot of information together, even some documents in the same program that we were interested in, and they put these things together. Now, this is a summary of the disk research programs in only one factory, the BMW factory in Germany, who built the engines, the special engines for the Nazi research program, which ran on free energy and gravity control. But these were, in the BMW plant, their research is going along more conventional lines, and they were powered by jet engines. You can see the jet engine hanging underneath there between the wheels, and the relative size of the vehicle. There's a little man in the middle there in the bottom that gives us reference to scale. Here's another version. This is a two-seater version, and it still has one jet engine on the bottom between the occupants, but a little bit larger in size. Now, we're going up in size because there's a little figure up there in the top middle. Here is the next stage of research. There's the size of the man, and the vehicle is getting bigger. This one carried 4 people. The jet engines were internal. Here's another one with a jet engine in the bottom. It has it had a cockpit for 4 people. This is the same, actually it's the same craft that was
twin
top
engine.
and bottom. Now here's a front view of another one. These were called Flugelrad. The first one is Flugelrad V1, then Flugelrad V2, and I think this is probably Flugelrad V top of V3, and this may be the bottom of the Flugelrad V3. You see how the jet engine was applied to the vanes in the rim. Now, there's 2 jet engines on this one, and it carried more occupants. The little man is to scale, and you can see that the ships are getting larger. They're on the order of 100 feet in diameter, or coming up on 100 feet.
They got pretty big.
Here is a Flugelrad V3 with 2 engines under it. That's a side and a top view. Here's a bottom view of the same one. It has, I think there's 4 seats in this one. This is another Flugelrad, BMW Flugelrad V3, V4. Here's this is a V4. This is a larger one. This had 6 positions aboard. Now you see the relative size of the craft, and we'll get the little man here. There he is, standing alongside the wheel at the bottom there, which we can barely see. There's another one climbing a ladder up there in the front. We're looking at the front half, head on and side looking at the bow, and here's the rear version of that. You can see the rear, the jet engine efflux there, and the rest of the craft in the profile view. So now here is this is one of the fireballs. This thing just rose into the air and flew through formations, scaring pilots and gathering data, collecting data in its air flight. Here is a side drawing, profile drawing of a Haunebu 2. You can see it up there in the left-hand corner. Can't read it because it's too indistinct, but this right up here, it says Haunebu 2. And here we have the performance specifications on it. This is about 100 feet in diameter, a little over 100 feet in diameter. I can't read the specifications from here, but it was
25 meters.
25 meters,
75
about
feet.
75 feet. Yeah, okay. And they ranged, the Haunebus ranged from 75 feet to 150 feet, and then there was another big version that ranged from 200 to 300 feet. And since it was an experimental program, there was no assembly line. They were all individual vehicles, all handmade, and especially made in individual vehicles. Here is a picture of one of those Haunebu 2s out of Breslau. And you can see a German Army truck, the cab of a German Army truck right down
On the
here.
left side, yeah.
And it's backed up under the flange. There's a crane here on the other side of the craft. Down here, there are 3 men working under the craft that we can't see in this treatment of the picture, but they're bent over a little bit and standing up, mostly standing up under. They're working on something on the bottom, and right over here in this picture is the German Iron Cross painted on the side of the cabin there. Now notice that it has 3 portholes and a vertical side to the cabin right here, and a dome on the top, and another dome on top of that. And notice how that compares with this schematic that we just showed you. Here is the 3 windows. There's the German insignia. 3 more windows, a raised cupola on top, 3 hemispheres underneath. And here we have a photograph of one of those in flight. This is another version, a later version. Here's another picture of the same one. This is a schematic of a larger one. Now
that's the Haunebu 3.
This is the Haunebu 3, and can you see
that's
the
over
meter?
200 feet. 200 feet across.
200 feet across. 79 meters. Is that what it says?
71 meters.
Anyway, that's a very large one. This one was a version that was designed actually to go to Mars and back. They were very.
And it was heavy, about 14,000 pounds.
Yeah, it was a big one, very heavy. It's much larger than one we saw the German truck backed under. Here's a version of that flying, in flight. Here's a painting by Jim Nichols, who lives in town here, of one of those in flight from some information we gave him. Here's another one in flight. They're all slightly different because they're all hand-built and separately built. Here's a Haunebu version in flight, another Haunebu version. Here we have a Haunebu 4, I believe that is, that has, here they're doing some experimental work. They've got a German Panzer tank turret mounted on the bottom upside down because in their development of these special engines, these they're kind of like rotor motors. They're built by BMW, but they were, when the engines powered by free energy, when they motored up to a certain speed, they created a gravity field around them, and everything floated in the gravity bubble. And they found that the bubble included the whole craft, and that weight didn't seem to be a limitation, and that's why they mounted the Panzer turret on the bottom upside down, seeking to put some armament on these craft. We'll get a better look at the gun here in just a second. There's another one. You can see the gun on the bottom. It's in flight. There you can see the gun quite well, and that's a cast iron Panzer tank turret inverted, mounted upside down, the bottom of that.
In the later ones, I know also one of the weapons they put on that was a, they call it the, something similar to a laser. It was a Pristron tube.
Oh, Klystron tubes, yeah, they had those. They had beam weapons. They had another device, was the Germans called a Motorstoppel, which means it's a ray. It's a beam that stops engines, interrupts ignition circuits, and caused airplane ignition engines to stop when it was the beam was turned on them. Here is another picture with the cannon turret on the bottom. Here you can see it quite clearly.
Yeah. I wonder if that was the Pristron tube.
No, that's not a Pristron tube. No, no, that's just a Panzer turret. Here you can see the German Iron Cross insignia on the bottom of that one that we just saw. And here is the Panzer turret upside down, mounted on the bottom of the disc. It's a big disc.
Oh.
Well, I guess that finished our
When they had it
picture.
upside down, when they were going to park it, how did they get it right side up?